Don't let him fall yet. The voice on the phone was calm, almost too calm, and Claire Bennett stared across the freezing garage at Cole Mercer as if those 5 words had just changed the temperature in the room. It was 5:47 on a November morning in Blackridge, Pennsylvania, and snow swept sideways across the narrow mountain road outside her home. 34-year-old Claire stood beside her dead husband's workbench, one hand gripping an old cell phone, the other pressed around a clean shop towel she'd used to cover the cut on Cole's forehead after the garage window shattered. 8-year-old Ethan sat near the back wall wrapped in Cole's enormous leather jacket, looking so small inside it that under any other circumstances Claire might have laughed. There was nothing funny about this morning. 3 tow trucks idled beyond the open garage door, their amber lights turning the snow gold, then black, then gold again. Ray Dugan stood beside the first truck holding a folder against his chest. 10 minutes, Claire, he called. After that, I do what I came here to do. Cole slowly straightened. At 52, he was the kind of man strangers noticed before they wanted to, broad-shouldered, gray-bearded, weathered by too many years on motorcycles and too many winters spent pretending he didn't need anybody. This morning, though, even standing looked difficult. Claire lowered her voice into the phone. Who is this? The stranger ignored the question. Is Cole still standing? Claire looked at him. Cole was leaning against Daniel's unfinished 1978 shovelhead, stubbornly trying to make exhaustion look like posture. Barely. A pause followed. Then the man said, "Tell him not to fall yet." Claire's fingers tightened around the phone. Why? The line went quiet for half a second. Because we're close. The call ended. Claire stared at the screen. We're close? She whispered. Who is we? Cole gave her the tired expression of a man who knew the answer was about to become very loud. You made the call. You gave me the number. Fair point. Even Ethan looked up at that. Claire almost laughed, which somehow made her angrier. Cole, there are 3 tow trucks in my driveway. My son hasn't had breakfast. My garage has a new ventilation system where a window used to be, and some mysterious man just told me you're not allowed to fall over. This would be a wonderful time to become conversational. Cole glanced toward the road. Not my strongest skill. I've noticed. Ray checked his watch. 9 minutes. Claire stepped toward the garage opening. Ray, please. Daniel built this place. Give me until noon. Ray's face tightened. For one brief second, he didn't look like the man trying to take her property. He looked tired. Older than 47. I already gave you more time than I had, Claire. Then give me 4 more hours. I can't. Or you won't. That landed. Ray looked away. Cole said nothing. That was what unsettled Claire most about him. He never seemed to reach for words when an action would do. 36 hours earlier, she had barely known this man. Now he was standing between her family and the coldest morning of her life. Ethan slipped out from the jacket and approached him. Mr. Cole. Cole looked down. Yeah, buddy. Are we losing Dad's motorcycle? Claire closed her eyes. Of every question her son could have asked, naturally, he had found the one nobody in the garage knew how to answer. Cole crouched until they were nearly eye level. Not this morning. You promise? Cole hesitated. Claire saw it immediately. A promise meant something to this man. I'm going to try real hard, he finally said. Ethan considered that, then nodded. Okay. Mom says that's more honest than promising. Claire looked at her son. I said that about cleaning your room. Still counts. For one impossible second, Cole smiled. Then it disappeared. A sound rolled through the mountains. Low. Distant. Claire turned toward the road. Ray turned too. Another rumble followed. Then another, blending until the sound no longer resembled one engine. It resembled weather. Through the curtain of snow, a single white headlight appeared around the eastern bend. Then 2, 5, 10. More emerged behind them, stretching back into the gray morning until Claire stopped trying to count. Ray lowered the folder. One of his drivers stepped out of his truck. Ethan hurried to the garage opening, eyes widening. Mom. Claire couldn't answer. The sound grew deeper as motorcycles descended toward Blackridge, their headlights cutting through the storm in a long, deliberate line. Claire looked at Cole. He wasn't smiling now. Something older and sadder had settled into his face. What did I just do? She asked. Cole watched the riders coming through the snow. You asked for help. Claire stared at him, because she still didn't understand why that mattered. She didn't know yet that Cole had spent years regretting one phone call he had refused to answer, or that her husband Daniel had left behind more than an unfinished motorcycle. She didn't know why nearly 200 riders were coming down that mountain, and she certainly didn't know why some of them were carrying toolboxes instead of anything meant for confrontation. All Claire knew was that 36 hours earlier, before the broken window, before the old phone number, before an entire mountain seemed to wake beneath the sound of engines, she had been pouring black coffee for a frightening stranger in the back booth of a roadside diner. And when he saw the name Bennett pinned to her uniform, his hand had suddenly stopped halfway to the cup. 36 hours earlier, Claire Bennett had exactly $63 in her wallet, half a tank of gas, and one unopened envelope on the passenger seat that she had spent 3 days pretending did not exist. At 6:15 in the morning, the neon open sign of the Blackridge Diner buzzed against a gray Pennsylvania sky, while Claire refilled coffee cups for truckers, construction workers, and the same retired mailman who complained every Thursday that 2 eggs cost more than his first automobile. Blackridge was that kind of town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody remembered your mistakes. And somehow everybody knew you were having money trouble before the bank did. Claire had learned to smile through it. 18 months after Daniel died, smiling had become another part of the uniform, right alongside the blue apron and the plastic name tag pinned above her heart. Her 8-year-old son Ethan was staying with Mrs. Holloway next door before school, which meant Claire had until 7:30 to finish her shift, drive home, make sure he had his backpack, and pretend their heater was making that terrible noise because old houses had personality. The truth was simpler. Everything needed fixing, and fixing things cost money. She carried a fresh pot toward the back booth when she noticed the stranger. He had arrived without conversation, ordered black coffee, and chosen the seat with a clear view of both the front door and parking lot. He was broad-shouldered, gray-bearded, and dressed in weathered leather that made 2 tourists near the window suddenly become fascinated by their pancakes. Claire had seen bikers before. Blackridge sat near enough to several mountain routes that motorcycles rolled through every summer. This man felt different. He was not loud. He did not need to be. Silence seemed to travel with him. Claire approached anyway. Brent did not care who looked intimidating. "Coffee?" she asked. The stranger slid his cup forward. "Please." His voice was low and unexpectedly polite. Claire poured. "Anything to eat?" "No." She glanced at the untouched menu. "You know, ordering breakfast is generally how diners stay in business." He looked at her for a moment. "Coffee is breakfast." That explains the cheerful personality. For the smallest instant, one corner of his mouth moved. Claire walked away before deciding whether she had imagined it. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Talbot, 76 years old and determined to carry every grocery bag in Pennsylvania by herself, entered through the side door. One paper sack split near her table. Apples rolled everywhere. Before Claire could get around the counter, the biker was already out of his booth. He collected the apples, rescued a runaway orange from beneath a chair, and placed everything into a spare diner bag. Mrs. Talbot looked at his leather vest, then at him. "You planning to charge me for roadside assistance?" The man handed her the bag. "First one's free." Mrs. Talbot nodded seriously. "Good. I am on a fixed income." Claire had to hide a smile behind the coffee pot. The stranger returned to his booth without waiting for thanks. That bothered her assumptions more than if he had made a show of helping. When Claire brought his check, his eyes dropped to her name tag. "Bennett." His hand stopped halfway to the coffee cup. The change was small, but Claire noticed small changes. Working in a diner taught you when a customer was about to complain, cry, propose marriage, or discover he had forgotten his wallet. "Something wrong?" she asked. His gaze stayed on the name. "Bennett, your married name?" Claire stiffened. "Why?" He looked up. His eyes were tired rather than threatening. "Just asking." "Then yes." He hesitated. "Daniel Bennett?" The diner seemed to grow quieter around her, though nothing had actually changed. A fork struck a plate somewhere behind them. The refrigerator compressor clicked on. Claire slowly lowered the coffee pot. "How do you know my husband?" The stranger's expression closed like a door. "Knew him a long time ago." "That was not my question." He reached into his pocket, placed enough cash on the table to cover the coffee several times over, and stood. Claire saw the stitched name on his vest for the first time. Mercer. Something stirred in her memory. Daniel had mentioned that name once, years ago. During a conversation he had abruptly refused to finish. "Wait," Claire said. The man stopped. "What is your first name?" He looked toward the windows where the first flakes of snow had begun drifting across the parking lot. "Cole." Claire felt the memory click into place. Daniel had not told her much about Cole Mercer, but he had told her one thing. If that man ever walks back into my life, he had once said, it means something from my past finally caught up with me. Cole opened the diner door and disappeared into the cold before Claire could ask what Daniel had meant. 10 minutes later, her shift ended. She found the envelope waiting on her passenger seat, finally tore it open, and read the words final notice. Then her old sedan refused to start. Claire turned the key again, and the sedan answered with a tired clicking sound that seemed almost sarcastic. She leaned her forehead against the steering wheel. Of course. Snow had begun settling along the edges of the diner parking lot, and the dashboard clock read 7:38. Ethan needed to be at school in less than an hour. The final notice lay open beside her, its language cold and efficient. She had 72 hours to resolve the overdue balance tied to the house and garage, or the lender could begin taking control of the property Daniel had spent years building. Claire folded the letter before fear could become panic. She tried the ignition once more. Nothing. Then a motorcycle engine rolled across the parking lot. Cole Mercer passed the diner entrance on a dark Harley-Davidson, gray beard moving in the wind. Claire watched him disappear toward Route 16 and felt an unreasonable flash of irritation. Perfect, she muttered. Mysterious friend of my dead husband, excellent conversationalist, completely useless mechanic. She immediately felt ridiculous. Cole owed her nothing. She reached for her phone to call Mrs. Holloway when the distant motorcycle sound faded. 10 seconds later, it returned. Cole rolled back into the parking lot, stopped beside her sedan, and removed his gloves. Claire lowered the window 2 inches. Forget something? Apparently. He nodded toward the hood. Pop it. I have roadside assistance. Then I will leave. Claire looked at the final notice, then at the clock. Roadside assistance might take 2 hours. Cole waited. Claire sighed and pulled the hood release. You are enjoying this, are you not? A little. 5 minutes later, Cole had traced the problem to a loose alternator connection and corroded terminal. He cleaned it well enough to get the sedan running, then stepped back as the engine finally caught. Claire stared at him through the windshield. How much? Nothing. I do not accept free repairs. That was not a repair. That was mechanical encouragement. Despite herself, Claire laughed. It surprised her enough that she stopped almost immediately. Cole looked away, giving her the dignity of pretending he had not noticed. 20 minutes later, Claire reached home and found Ethan waiting on the porch with Mrs. Holloway. The boy climbed into the sedan, then pointed through the rear window. Mom, motorcycle guy is following us. Claire checked the mirror. Cole was indeed half a block behind. He is making sure the car does not quit again. Ethan considered that. That is nice. It is cautious. Can something be both? Claire glanced at him. Please do not become philosophical before 3rd grade. The sedan made it to school, but on the return trip the charging light appeared again. Cole, still following at a respectful distance, signaled for Claire to pull over beside a quiet stretch of road lined with pine trees. The temporary fix had failed. Alternator is going, he said. You have maybe a few miles. Claire folded her arms against the cold. And I suppose you know somewhere nearby. Cole hesitated. Your garage. That caught her attention. You know where I live? Daniel showed me the property years ago. Claire studied him. Every answer seemed to open another door. She finally nodded. They reached the Bennett house before the sedan gave up completely. Cole followed Claire into the detached garage while snow whispered against the metal roof. The place had remained almost untouched since Daniel died. His tools still hung above the workbench. An old radio sat beside coffee cans filled with bolts. At the center, beneath a dusty canvas cover, rested the motorcycle Claire had never been able to sell. Cole stopped walking. Something changed in his face. Claire noticed before he spoke. He approached slowly and pulled away the canvas. Chrome caught the pale morning light. The unfinished 1978 Harley-Davidson shovelhead stood exactly where Daniel had left it. Cole placed one hand on the handlebar, not possessively, but carefully, almost like greeting someone after a long absence. You recognize it, Claire said. Cole did not answer immediately. I helped him take this apart. Claire felt the room narrow around them. Long time ago, Daniel never told me that. There were things Daniel did not talk about. Claire stepped closer. Including you? Cole looked at the motorcycle. Especially me. She wanted answers, but the sadness in his voice stopped her for a moment. Then Cole noticed a faded scratch along the fuel tank and gave a quiet breath that almost became a laugh. He never fixed that. What happened? Daniel tried to move the bike through a doorway without measuring first. Claire smiled despite herself. That sounds like him. For the first time, they shared a memory instead of suspicion. Then Claire asked the question that had been waiting since the diner. Were you his friend? Cole's hand left the motorcycle. Once. What happened? He stared at the unfinished machine for several seconds. He wanted a different life. I thought he was walking away from people who needed him. And Cole finally met her eyes. I was wrong. Claire swallowed. Did you ever tell him that? The silence answered before Cole could. Then his gaze dropped toward the lower frame of the shovel head, where a small steel toolbox had been mounted beneath the seat. His expression sharpened. That box was not there when I knew this bike. Claire frowned. Daniel put it on years ago. Cole crouched beside it. A tiny brass lock hung from the latch. Claire had seen it 100 times and never thought to ask what was inside. Cole touched the lock, then looked at her. Did Daniel ever give you a key? Claire stared at the brass lock and shook her head. If Daniel gave me a key, he forgot to mention what it opened. Cole stood slowly, leaving the box untouched. Then it stays closed. The answer surprised her. You are not curious? Curious gets expensive. Claire glanced toward the final notice folded inside her coat pocket. Apparently, everything gets expensive. Before Cole could answer, tires crunched over the gravel outside. A white tow truck rolled into the driveway, followed by a dark pickup. Claire recognized the red Dugan Recovery logo before the engine stopped, and the knot in her stomach tightened. Ray Dugan climbed out carrying a brown folder. He looked less like a villain than a man who had not slept properly in months. His work jacket was faded, his boots were muddy, and exhaustion had settled permanently around his eyes. Claire, he called. We need to talk. People usually say that right before ruining somebody's morning. Ray looked at Cole standing inside the garage. I did not realize you had company. Cole said nothing. Claire stepped outside and pulled the garage door mostly closed behind her. What do you want, Ray? He held out the folder. I wanted you to hear it from me before another letter showed up. Claire did not take it. I already got one. Ray exhaled. Then you know the note on the property changed hands. Daniel had borrowed against the garage years earlier when his contracting business nearly failed. Claire had been making payments since his death, sometimes late, sometimes by sacrificing something else, but always enough to keep moving. What she had not known was that the lender had sold the remaining debt to a development company assembling land along the highway corridor. Ray's towing company had become their local contractor, and according to the documents, the garage equipment and unfinished motorcycle were listed among the secured assets. You have 72 hours, Ray said. After that, they start foreclosure proceedings and inventory the collateral. Claire finally took the folder. The numbers blurred for a moment. Why are you delivering this? Ray looked toward the highway beyond the trees. Because they offered to clear my business debt if I help finish the acquisitions. Claire stared at him. So you save your company by taking my home? I am trying to keep 6 employees working. And I am trying to keep an 8-year-old boy in the house where he remembers his father. Ray's jaw tightened. My wife was sick for 4 years. I borrowed against everything I owned to keep the business alive while I took care of her. After she died, the bills did not disappear because I was grieving. Claire's anger did not vanish, but it changed shape. Pain recognized pain even when it stood on the opposite side of a property line. Cole stepped out of the garage. Ray glanced at the leather vest, then back at Claire. This is paperwork, Mercer. Not your world. Cole's expression remained calm. Seems like her world. You cannot intimidate a mortgage. Claire turned toward Cole before he could respond. And you cannot punch one either. Cole raised both hands slightly. Was not planning to. Ray almost smiled. Good, because the county clerk has terrible customer service when people punch documents. Claire gave both men a look. Wonderful. The foreclosure has a comedy department. The humor lasted only a second. Ray handed her his card. I can delay the inventory until tomorrow morning. That is all I can do. Why even give me that? Claire asked. Ray looked tired again. Because I am not enjoying this. He returned to his truck and drove away, leaving Claire in the falling snow with 72 hours suddenly feeling like 72 minutes. Inside the garage, Cole examined the shovel head while Claire sat on Daniel's old stool reading every page twice. There was no miracle hidden in the fine print. No forgotten insurance policy. No easy escape. I should sell the bike, she said quietly. Cole looked over. Would not cover enough. It would cover something. Daniel would have sold it himself if he thought that was the answer. Claire frowned. You keep talking like you know what Daniel would do. Cole absorbed the accusation without defending himself. Then he crouched beside the motorcycle and noticed something behind the locked steel box. A narrow envelope had been wedged between the mounting bracket and the frame, yellowed at the edges and protected inside a plastic sleeve. Cole carefully worked it free and handed it to Claire. Her breath caught immediately. She knew the handwriting. Daniel's. Inside were old receipts, 2 photographs from his military years, and a folded sheet of paper covered with names and telephone numbers. Claire scanned the list without understanding. Cole went completely still. At the top was his own name, Cole Mercer. A line had been drawn through it years ago in Daniel's black ink. Beneath the list, Daniel had written one sentence. If Claire or Ethan ever need anything, do not let pride leave them alone. Claire read Daniel's sentence 3 times before the words began to feel real. Do not let pride leave them alone. The irony almost made her angry. Daniel had known her too well. For 18 months, she had accepted extra shifts, repaired Ethan's winter coat twice, learned which bills tolerated being 5 days late, and smiled whenever neighbors asked whether she needed anything. She always answered the same way. We are managing. Sometimes managing was just another word for drowning quietly. Cole stood beside the shovelhead, staring at his crossed-out name. Why did he cross you out? Claire asked. Cole rubbed a thumb across his knuckles. Because by then he knew I would not answer. That sounds like a story. Not a good one. Those are usually the stories people avoid telling. Cole looked toward the snowy driveway. Daniel wanted out. He wanted this place, you, a kid someday. I thought leaving meant turning his back on everyone who had stood beside him. Claire folded the paper carefully. So you stopped being friends because my husband wanted a family? Sounds worse when you say it. I am having trouble finding the version where it sounds better. Cole accepted that without argument. Later that afternoon, after Ethan came home from school, Claire found Cole in the garage examining the shovelhead with a flashlight. Ethan had attached himself to the biker with the fearless curiosity children sometimes reserved for people adults had already decided to distrust. What is that? Ethan asked, pointing at a socket wrench. Cole told him. Ethan picked up another tool. And this? Cole answered again. The third tool was a torque wrench. Ethan studied it seriously. So this one makes the motorcycle go faster? No. Louder? No. Then Dad would have been disappointed. Cole actually laughed. Claire froze in the doorway. Daniel used to say almost exactly the same thing. The warmth lasted until she noticed the removed fuel tank sitting on Daniel's workbench. What are you doing? Cole turned. Checking the lines. I did not ask you to work on it. I know. Then put it back. Ethan looked between them and quietly set down the wrench. Cole did not argue. He replaced the tank exactly where he found it and gathered his gloves. That obedience somehow made Claire feel worse. You cannot walk in here after years of being absent and turn Daniel into some project you finally decided to finish. Cole stopped. I know. Do you? Her voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. Because this garage is not unfinished business to me. It is where my husband taught our son how to hold a screwdriver. It is where he drank terrible coffee every Saturday morning. It is the last room that still feels like he might walk through the door. Cole looked around the garage as though seeing more than tools and machinery. I am sorry. 2 words. Nothing dramatic. No defense. He placed the keys he had been using on the workbench and headed for the door. Ethan watched him go, then hurried after him. Mr. Cole. Cole stopped outside. Yeah. Ethan shoved his hands into his coat pockets. Was my dad mad at you? Cole looked toward Claire, then back at the boy. Yeah, buddy. He was. Were you mad at him? For a while. Ethan frowned. Did you say sorry? Cole's face changed. No. Ethan considered this with the practical seriousness of an 8-year-old deciding whether someone had forgotten homework. You probably should have. Claire nearly called him back, but Cole nodded instead. You are probably right. Ethan shrugged. Mom says I have to say sorry even when I do not want to. Your mom sounds strict. She makes me eat broccoli too. That is rough. Ethan smiled. Claire did not. She was watching Cole's eyes. For the first time, the intimidating biker looked less like a stranger from Daniel's past, and more like a man carrying something he had never put down. Before leaving, Cole reached inside his vest and removed the folded list. This belongs to you. Claire took it. What am I supposed to do with numbers from years ago? Call them. I do not ask strangers for money. Daniel did not write money. Cole tapped the bottom of the page. He wrote anything. Claire looked again at her husband's handwriting. Pride. Such a small word for something that could build walls around an entire life. Her eyes moved over the telephone numbers, then back to Cole's crossed-out name. If he thought these people would help, why did he hide the list? Cole glanced toward the locked steel box beneath the motorcycle seat. Maybe he did not hide it. Claire followed his gaze. Cole continued quietly. Maybe we still have not found what he meant for you to see. That evening, Claire sat at the kitchen table with Daniel's list beside a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier. Ethan was doing math homework across from her, occasionally staring at the paper as though multiplication had personally offended him. Cole had left after promising to return in the morning with an alternator for Claire's sedan. Claire picked up her phone and dialed the first number. Disconnected. The second belonged to a man named Thomas Reed, who had moved to Arizona 6 years earlier. He remembered Daniel immediately, but his wife had recently lost her job, and his apology sounded painfully sincere. The third number rang until voicemail. The fourth reached an older veteran named Frank who offered to drive 200 miles and help repair anything that needed hands, but he did not have money to spare. Claire thanked him and hung up before her voice could break. Ethan looked up from his homework. Did it work? Not exactly. Call another one. Claire looked at the remaining names. Sometimes people cannot help, sweetheart. Ethan erased a number with unnecessary force. Sometimes you do not know until you ask. Claire stared at him. Who taught you that? Mrs. Holloway. He paused. Also, she says your meatloaf is dry. Claire blinked. Mrs. Holloway is no longer a trusted source. Ethan grinned, and for a few seconds the kitchen felt normal. Then Claire called 2 more numbers. One was no longer in service. Another man remembered Daniel, but was recovering from surgery. By 9 o'clock, hope had become exhausting. Claire folded the list and pushed it away. Enough. From the doorway came Cole's voice. How many? Claire turned. He stood on the porch holding a cardboard box containing a rebuilt alternator. Do you normally appear at people's houses without making noise? Motorcycle is loud enough to announce me to 3 counties. Fair. He set the box down. Claire told him about the calls. Cole listened without interrupting, then picked up the list. His eyes stopped on one name. Wade Lawson. Claire noticed. Who is Wade? Someone Daniel knew. That describes everyone on the page. Cole looked at her. Someone I know too. He stepped onto the porch and dialed from his own phone. Claire could hear only Cole's side. Wade. It is Mercer. A pause. Daniel Bennett's family is about to lose their property. Another pause, longer this time. Cole's jaw tightened. No, I am not asking the chapter to scare anybody. He listened. I am asking whether you remember what Daniel did for people when they needed him. Claire moved closer to the screen door. Cole lowered his voice. Because he was right about me. Silence. Whatever Wade said next made Cole look toward the dark road. Tomorrow morning? Cole asked. Then his expression hardened. That might be too late. The call ended. Claire opened the door. Well, he will make some calls. That sounds promising. It is not. Cole explained that Wade would not bring riders into a legal property dispute simply because an old friend asked. If Claire was going to keep the house, they needed a lawful way to stop or delay the foreclosure. No threats. No intimidation. No miracle convoy appearing because somebody snapped their fingers. So what now? Claire asked. Cole picked up Ray's paperwork. Now we read. They spent the next 2 hours at Daniel's kitchen table going through every page. Claire discovered something she had missed. The developer had purchased the note legally, but the immediate pressure was not coming from the bank. Ray had been given a deadline by the developer to complete the local acquisitions before financing closed on a highway commercial project. Cole pointed to the date. Ray is desperate. Claire frowned. That makes him dangerous? Makes him human. Desperate people convince themselves bad choices are necessary. Claire thought about the final notice she had hidden for 3 days. She understood that more than she wanted to. Near midnight, Cole's phone buzzed. A message from Wade contained the name of a veteran's legal aid attorney in one sentence. Find out exactly what can be paid, challenged, or delayed. Claire looked at Cole. He helped. He gave us a door. That is more than we had. Cole nodded, but his attention shifted toward the window. Headlights had stopped at the end of Claire's driveway. A dark pickup idled there for several seconds before moving on. Claire recognized it. Ray's. Cole looked at the clock. 12:14 in the morning. Then Claire's phone rang. Ray's name appeared on the screen. She answered. His voice sounded strained. Claire, I need you to listen carefully. The timetable changed. They want the secured property inventoried tomorrow morning. I tried to stop it. Claire stood slowly. How much time do I have? Ray hesitated. Until sunrise. By 4:30 in the morning. The snow had thickened enough to erase the edges of Claire's driveway, and nobody in the Bennett house had slept. Ethan had finally dozed off on the living room couch beneath Cole's leather jacket, while Claire sat at the kitchen table waiting for the veteran's legal aid office to open. Cole stood by the window with a mug of coffee he had forgotten to drink. At 4:47, headlights appeared through the trees. That is early, Claire whispered. Cole set down the mug. Two tow trucks rolled into the driveway, followed by Ray's dark pickup. Claire stepped onto the porch before anyone reached the garage. You said sunrise. Ray climbed out, looking miserable. I know. The sun is not up. The developer moved the deadline again. Claire laughed once, without humor. How convenient. Ray looked toward the house. Claire, please do not make this harder. You were standing in my driveway before 5 in the morning to inventory my dead husband's property. I think Hart arrived before you did. Cole came outside but remained several feet behind her. Ray noticed him. Mercer, stay out of this. Trying to. You have a strange way of showing it. One of Ray's employees began backing a tow truck toward the garage. The driveway was slick, visibility poor. Claire raised her hand. Wait. My son is inside. Ray immediately signaled the driver to stop, but the truck slid several feet farther than expected and bumped a stack of old lumber beside the garage. The boards shifted against the side wall, and a loose wooden frame struck the already brittle window. Glass cracked and dropped inward onto the empty workbench. Ethan, awakened by the noise, appeared in the doorway between the house and garage. Mom. Cole moved faster than Claire expected from a man his size. He crossed the garage, guided Ethan safely back toward the house, and shielded him from the falling snow and scattered glass. In the rush, a small edge of broken glass caught Cole near the forehead. Claire saw the shallow cut and grabbed a clean shop towel. Sit down. I am fine. That was not a request. Ethan looked at Cole seriously. Mom uses that voice on me. Cole sat, starting to understand why. Even Claire almost smiled. Outside, Ray was arguing on his phone. When he returned, his face had changed. I am sorry about the window. I will pay for it. Claire pressed the towel gently against Cole's forehead. That is generous considering you are trying to take the building attached to it. Ray closed his eyes for a moment. They are telling me if I do not complete the inventory today, they pull my contract. If they pull my contract, my company is done. So that makes this right? No. His answer came immediately. It makes it what I am doing. Cole rose and walked toward Ray. Claire saw his hands tighten, then relax. Ray saw it too. For a moment, neither man spoke. Ethan stood behind Claire, watching. Cole looked back at the boy, then stepped aside from Ray's path. You want to save your company, Cole said quietly. Find a way that does not require this kid to lose his father's garage. Ray swallowed. I do not have one. Then you have the same problem we do. Something in Cole's restraint unsettled Claire more than anger would have. Ray finally agreed to wait until 6 o'clock before beginning the inventory. He returned to his pickup, leaving the tow trucks idling in the snow. Inside the garage, Claire replaced the towel on Cole's forehead. You surprised me. Low expectations help. I thought you were going to do something stupid. So did I. His honesty silenced her. Cole looked toward Daniel's shovel head. There is something I should have told you. Claire waited. The last time Daniel called me, I saw his name on my phone. Cole's voice grew quieter. We had not spoken in months. I was still angry, so I let it ring. Claire stopped moving. When was that? Years ago. Before Ethan was born. Daniel never called again. Cole stared at the floor. I told myself there would always be another chance. Claire thought of Daniel's crossed-out name, the list, the sentence about pride. Suddenly it all made painful sense. Cole had not come back to repair a motorcycle. He had come back because regret had been waiting for him in this garage longer than anyone knew. Claire reached into Daniel's old desk drawer and took out the cell phone she had kept after his death. She placed it on the workbench between them. Then do not miss this one. Cole looked at her. What do you mean? Claire pointed toward Wade Lawson's number on Daniel's list. You called him because you wanted to fix the past. I am going to call because I need help now. Cole studied her face. Claire, if you make that call, you need to mean it. Outside, Ray checked his watch. 5:42. Claire picked up the phone, but before dialing she looked at Cole. For 18 months, I thought asking for help meant I had failed. Cole shook his head. Maybe asking is what keeps failure from becoming final. Claire entered Wade's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button as the first pale hint of morning appeared beyond the Pennsylvania mountains. Claire pressed the call button at 5:43 in the morning. Wade Lawson answered on the fourth ring with the voice of a man who had already been awake for hours. Lawson. Claire swallowed. My name is Claire Bennett. Cole Mercer told me that if things got bad enough, I should call this number. Silence filled the line. Outside, snow swept across Ray's tow trucks. Is Cole still standing? Wade asked. Claire looked toward him. A clean shop towel covered the small cut near his forehead, and exhaustion had turned his face pale beneath his gray beard. Barely. Wade's answer came without hesitation. Then tell him not to fall yet. Claire tightened her grip on the phone. Who are you? A man who owed Daniel Bennett a favor longer than I should have. Claire looked at Daniel's unfinished shovelhead. I do not need anyone to frighten Ray. I do not want trouble. I just cannot do this alone anymore. Wade was quiet for a moment. How much time? Claire glanced outside. Ray checked his watch. About 10 minutes. Look east. The line disconnected. Claire lowered the phone. What does that mean? Cole's eyes moved toward the road. It means Wade is still terrible at explaining things. At 5:47, the first engine reached them as a distant rumble beyond the ridge. Then came another, and another. Claire stepped into the garage opening. Headlights appeared through the snow around the eastern bend. First a handful, then dozens, then a line so long it disappeared behind the trees. Ray lowered his folder. One of his drivers whispered, "You have got to be kidding me." Ethan came beside Claire wearing Cole's leather jacket, like an oversized blanket. Are those all his friends? Cole shook his head. Some of them do not like me very much. Ethan looked impressed. That is a lot of people who do not like you. Claire covered a nervous laugh with her hand. The riders turned into the long driveway, moving slowly and carefully over the snow. There were 187 of them, from several riding groups and veterans organizations across Pennsylvania and neighboring states. But what stunned Claire was not the motorcycles. It was what came with them. One rider had lumber strapped securely to a small utility trailer. Another carried electrical supplies. A pickup behind the motorcycles held a portable generator. Men and women climbed off carrying toolboxes, thermoses, food containers, roofing materials, and boxes of hardware. A silver-haired woman removed her helmet and introduced herself as an attorney who volunteered with a veterans legal network. Another rider, a retired community banker named Samuel Price, carried a folder containing preliminary bridge financing options. Claire turned toward Cole. You knew? Not all of it. Wade Lawson parked near the garage and removed his helmet. He was in his early 60s, white-haired and broad through the shoulders. He looked at Cole first. You look terrible. Cole nodded. Good to see you too. Wade then faced Claire. Cole called me last night. I called everyone else. But I told them nobody moved until you asked for help yourself. Claire stared at him. They were waiting? About 12 miles east of town. In this weather? Wade shrugged. Coffee was bad, but yes. Something inside Claire finally broke open, not into despair, but relief. For 18 months, she had believed strength meant carrying every grocery bag, every overdue bill, every memory, and every fear without letting anyone see her hands shake. Now strangers were unloading lumber in her driveway because she had finally admitted those hands were tired. Ray approached cautiously. Wade held up one hand. Nobody is here to interfere with you. The attorney stepped forward instead. We are here to discuss the arrears, the collateral inventory, and lawful options to delay foreclosure. Ray stared at the riders. You brought almost 200 motorcycles to discuss paperwork. Wade glanced behind him. People complain when I schedule meetings at 6 in the morning, so I try to make them memorable. Even Ray smiled despite himself. Then another vehicle turned into the driveway. It belonged to the Blackridge Diner. Mrs. Talbot arrived behind it with 2 coffee urns. Mrs. Holloway brought breakfast. Ethan's teacher appeared carrying gloves and a snow shovel. News had traveled through town faster than the storm. The people who had watched Claire insist she was managing were arriving one by one to prove she no longer had to. Ray looked from the riders to the townspeople, then toward the broken garage window. His face changed. He had expected pressure. Instead, he was watching a community prepare to build. Samuel Price opened his folder. Mr. Dugan, If the arrears are covered this morning and the lender accepts restructuring, does your contract require you to continue the inventory? Ray looked down at the paperwork. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then he answered quietly, "No." Claire felt hope rise, but Ray did not move. His phone began ringing. He looked at the screen, and every trace of relief vanished. "It is the developer," he said. "And if I refuse what they are asking me to do next, I lose my company today." Ray let the phone ring twice before answering. He listened without speaking, and Claire watched the conflict move across his face. When he finally ended the call, the snow seemed quieter than before. "They want me to proceed regardless of payment negotiations," he said. The attorney, Margaret Hale, frowned. "If the arrears can be cured and the lender accepts restructuring, there is no reason to inventory collateral this morning." Ray looked toward his employees waiting beside the tow trucks. "There is a reason. My contract." Samuel Price closed his folder. "Then this stopped being a question about what you can do. It became a question about what you are willing to do." Ray stared at him. Claire expected anger. Instead, Ray looked suddenly exhausted. "My wife, Susan, died 14 months ago," he said. 6 people depend on my company for their paychecks. I promised them I would keep the doors open." Claire stepped closer. "I understand promises made to people you love." She looked back at Ethan. "But sometimes keeping one promise by breaking somebody else is not keeping it at all." Ray's eyes moved to the broken garage window, then to Daniel's motorcycle. Cole remained silent beside the workbench. He had spent years believing strength meant refusing to bend. Now he understood that sometimes the hardest thing a man could do was simply stop before pride chose for him. Ray pulled the developer's paperwork from his folder. "If I refuse, I probably lose the contract." Wade shrugged. "Contracts come and go." Ray gave him a tired look. "That is easy to say when you did not mortgage your business." "True," Wade replied. "So let us help with that problem too." Ray blinked. Wade pointed toward the riders, contractors, business owners, and townspeople filling the driveway. "You have 6 employees? I see about 200 people with vehicles that eventually need towing, repairs, inspections, and roadside service." Mrs. Talbot raised her coffee cup. "My Buick makes a noise nobody understands." Ray almost smiled. "That might not be mechanical, Mrs. Talbot." "It is absolutely mechanical. I do not make that sound." Laughter moved through the crowd, breaking the tension that had held the morning hostage. Ray looked down at the papers one final time, then called his drivers over. "We are done here." Claire released a breath she felt she had been holding for 18 months. By noon, Margaret had arranged a temporary foreclosure hold while Samuel helped restructure the remaining balance. Donations from Daniel's old friends covered the overdue portion, but Claire insisted on signing a repayment plan for what remained. Nobody rescued her by erasing her responsibility. They simply gave her enough ground to stand on again. Ray lost the developer contract that afternoon. 3 days later, however, Wade's chapter signed Dugan Recovery to provide towing support for several regional charity rides. Within a month, 2 local businesses followed. Ray did not become Claire's friend overnight, but he replaced the broken garage window himself and refused payment. Spring arrived slowly in Blackridge. Snow disappeared from the shoulders of Route 16, pine trees turned bright again, and the Bennett garage acquired a new wooden sign. Bennett and Mercer Community Garage. Every Saturday, Cole and a rotating group of volunteers repaired vehicles for veterans, elderly neighbors, and single parents who could not afford regular shop rates. Claire still worked several shifts at the diner because, as she told Cole, community spirit does not pay the electric bill. Cole replied, "Neither does your coffee." She threatened to charge him double. Ethan became the unofficial assistant mechanic, although his greatest contribution remained asking questions every 30 seconds. One warm Saturday in May, the 1978 Shovelhead finally stood complete beneath the open garage door. Cole polished the fuel tank, then held the key out to Claire. She did not take it. It was Daniel's. Cole nodded. "Still is." Ethan appeared between them. "Can we start it?" Claire looked at Cole, then at the motorcycle Daniel had never finished. For months, she had believed preserving grief meant leaving everything exactly where death had stopped it. Now she understood memory was not something you protected by refusing to move. She took the key and turned it. The engine came alive, deep and steady, filling the garage with a sound Ethan had waited years to hear. Cole lowered his head for a moment. Claire did not ask whether he was thinking about Daniel. She already knew. Later that evening, she found Daniel's old phone in the kitchen drawer. One saved voicemail remained unopened. Claire held the phone for several seconds, then placed it beside Daniel's photograph without pressing play. Outside, Ethan laughed as Cole showed him how to organize sockets by size. Riders and neighbors shared barbecue beneath strings of lights. Ray drove past in his tow truck, slowed, and lifted 2 fingers from the steering wheel. Cole returned the gesture. Claire stepped outside and closed the door behind her. She had spent 18 months believing asking for help meant admitting weakness. Instead, it had taught her something Daniel had understood before any of them. Strength is not measured by how much pain a person can carry alone, but by whether they still have the courage to reach for others when the weight becomes too much. Some people arrive in our lives looking nothing like the kindness we expected. Some second chances come years late. And sometimes healing begins with the simplest decision of all, allowing someone to stand beside you.